How's it going out there, Burlington? I'm Dan Cahill, the land steward with the Burlington Parks Recreation Waterfront Department. I'm here today to talk with Zoe Richards and Richard Dean about Burlington Wildways. How you guys doing?
Doing well, Dan. Thanks. Happy to be here.
So, Burlington Wildways, it's this very exciting initiative happening in our community. What's going on with it? Tell me about it.
Well, maybe I could start with a little history of where we are and how we got to where we are. My name is Zoe Richards, and I am the director of Burlington Wildways, and I have served on the Burlington Conservation Board maybe for 8 or 9 years. And one of the great things about Burlington is that we have a tremendous amount of open space in Burlington. About 48% of the city is open space. And of that open space, half the open space, or 25% of the open space, is in natural areas. 25% of the total land area of the city is in natural areas. And so we have really seen that as an opportunity and a great asset for the city of Burlington, and we are really committed to trying to help people get out into those natural areas and to try to make them a little bit more accessible, look out for their long-term protection, and that's been kind of what's gotten Burlington Wildways going. One of the tricks with our natural areas is that they're under multiple ownership, so sometimes that makes coordinating conservation, signage, access, knowing where they are, knowing how to get to places a little bit more complicated than you might imagine.
Got it. Okay, so you've been on the conservation board, you've kind of soaked in what's happening in Burlington, you kind of saw this challenge of this disconnect happening.
That's right.
And then, so you've kind of taken action and gotten yourself integrated into this process.
Yes, that's right. And maybe we could talk.
I'll just jump in a little bit as part of the history. So soon after I joined the City Council in 2017, Zoe and Matt Moore and a couple of other folks who have been moving this initiative forward came to me and informed me about this exciting opportunity, really, to look at the assets that we have in natural lands around the city. As a city councilor, there are city council initiative funds available to us that could help a little bit in terms of getting this initiative off the ground. So I was able to, with Zoe's help and a lot of oversight from other folks, write a resolution that was presented to the City Council. And that resolution was unanimous, co-sponsored by Councilor Joan Shannon, unanimously sponsored by or voted through by the City Council. And that provided kind of the initial seed money to start organizing a really concerted effort to bring all these people, all these stakeholders together that Zoe has already mentioned, and start talking about shared conservation values, access to lands, and connecting these wonderful places that exist out in our city that we don't really recognize. They're really hidden, in many ways, hidden treasures. And so, it's been a 2-year task, actually. We've been at it for 2 years, and we're going to talk a little bit about our recent summit, which has just been done, or just been completed. But I think, to me, one of the most important things that this initiative recognizes and what it forwards is the fact that these lands are available to all of us as citizens of Burlington. They're out there, and they're very close by. And we have the opportunity, and will have the opportunity with the help of this Wildways initiative, to get out there and enjoy them. So it doesn't matter, whether you have a car or not. If you have a bike, or you have, some hiking boots or some sneakers, you can get out there and really enjoy and be part of the natural world that's really close to us here in Burlington. It's just a fantastic opportunity for all of us. So I'll pass it back. I think that's probably a little bit of history, at least from the City Council end.
Yeah, and if I could just add one thing, about the resolution is, one of the great things about getting a resolution is that it gives you kind of a direction and a path forward. So the resolution really highlighted the great natural areas that we have in the city, but it also asked a bunch of the major land managers to work together to figure out how to have better access and how to make sure that we do a good job with conservation from
Yeah.
here on out. And
So who are some of those land managers?
yep, so they're the Winooski Valley Park District, which manages a fair amount of natural areas. They're Burlington Parks, Rec and Waterfront. The Intervale Center, Rock Point is a major land manager, and also University of Vermont.
Okay, great. So those are some of the folks that are participating
That's right.
in the Wildways initiative?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
great. So what are some vehicles and kind of things that Wildways has done to kind of bring groups together, bring people together to kind of talk about this stuff? What's that look like?
Well, just to actually go back to the resolution one more time, one of the very first thing that the resolution asked us to do was to gather all the stakeholders that we could imagine who would have a vested interest in the natural areas of Burlington and what would happen to them, and get them all in one room and come up with some kind of an action plan. So we had a summit in December of 2017 that really tried to gather everybody we could think of who would be an expert or invested in this process, and start to vision what can we do to make sure that these areas continue to be conserved, and what can we do so that citizens and wildlife are better able to move through those areas in the long run.
So I'll just jump in for a second and follow on that. After that initial summit, there was an opportunity for Zoe and Alicia Daniels, who is also with Burlington Parks and Rec and a naturalist, to actually go out and talk to all the MPAs. So they did some fantastic presentations to the MPAs about kind of reprising something that we talked about at the first summit, which were the 7 natural wonders of Burlington. And there are some amazing things out there that I think really, the NPAs were very enthusiastic about this initiative. We heard a lot of positive feedback, kind of let's keep going. And so that's what we've been doing. I think we are ready, and this may be something that we can talk about at the end, but I think we want to go back to the NPAs and tell everybody about the progress that we've made, because we've been making some really great progress, and I'll be quiet and let other people kind of spread the good news that where we are right now.
Well, one of the things we did at the NPAs was we, along with Alicia Daniel, we went out and tried to highlight some of the great, we call them the 7 wonders of Burlington, but some of the great natural wonders that we had out there. And one of the really fun things that we did was Alicia, the city naturalist, talked about what some of her favorites were, but we tried to solicit from all the people in the NPAs what their favorite places in Burlington were, and we really learned a lot about what was neat out there, maybe what we overlooked, or what people really kind of enjoy from ward to ward in their own backyards, and it was a really fun process. And I suffice to say, people really, I think one of the top wonders, of course, was Lake Champlain, but also Rock Point, Centennial Woods,
The Arms Forest as well.
The Arms Forest, yep, yeah, just a lot of really.
And one of the other things that is just amazing is if you put wildlife cameras out there, automatically tripped wildlife cameras, there are some amazing animals who are out in our woods or out in our natural areas. There are bobcat, there are fishers, there are some beautiful exotic wild ducks that I had no idea were part of.
Beaver.
Otters, beavers. It's kind of amazing that diversity exists right here, very close to where we all live. And I know that was something that was highlighted in the initial presentation that Alicia and Zoe did. Is that, wow, who knew that this was there? It's just it's really a great story. So.
Yeah. I think one of the special properties of Burlington is not only do we have so many natural areas, but we have these natural borders with Lake Champlain to the west and the Winooski River to the north and east of the city. And that leads to a lot of ways for wildlife to move in and around Burlington. And not only do we have a lot of natural areas, but we have really ecologically significant natural areas. We have a lot of floodplain, but we also have some fantastic uplands, and we have unique natural communities, just a real diversity of special places that have a lot of ecological value to them. Not just
Well, just hearing you
woods.
talk about it, you can tell that this is a passion of yours. It's not, just sitting in a room deciding something like this is in your bones, that wildlife and these things are really important values for you.
Yeah. And it would be, it'd be one thing if it was just having some kind of fresh air and woods to be out in, but these places are just, I think, as Richard was pointing out, they're really neat. You have these amazing opportunities to kind of connect with the wild right in town, and I think that's an opportunity we would like to, I think one of the reasons to get together as Burlington Wildways is to make sure that everybody has that same experience, not just people who are in the know or know
Right.
how to get, in and out of those places, to really do a better job to allow that for all our citizens.
Yeah.
So we've got it up here,
Okay.
the 10 natural wonders in Burlington. So it sounds like originally we set out to find the top 7 wonders of Burlington.
That's right.
Based on our
Good
community's values. And according to the MPA's in 2017 summit, here's our top 10.
Yes, yeah, and it wasn't exactly a scientific survey, but it really did give a sense for what people really value in the city, and so we're really going to pay attention to that.
Yeah. I think, one other thing that I might add is that putting this in somewhat of a larger context, we face as a world an issue of a changing climate based on what we've done as a society and as industrial countries, and we need to take action as we can on a local level to address those coming issues. Having this this really speaks to how we can value the things that are important in the natural world and do what we can to conserve them. That is action that we can take on a local level. It's something that is really it's great that we have that opportunity. So I really feel as though this is something that we can all get behind.
Yep, I agree. I also think that by having functional ecosystems, you have more resilience, in the face of climate change. But the other kind of undersung thing about natural areas is they're an amazing carbon sink. They're the least intensive way that you can mitigate climate change. You don't have to. It's not that all the efforts aren't worthwhile, but it's very, very efficient to keep functioning ecosystems and our natural areas intact.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I guess I'll just ask real quickly, what's Wildways, this effort to bring together landowners to look at the open spaces of Burlington, to find out how to protect the ecology, provide meaningful access for the community. What's at stake if Wildways isn't existing right now? What's at stake if we don't bring folks together to have that conversation? What's at risk, I should say?
Well, I think that clearly Burlington has benefits from the fact that many of these lands, being in a floodway in the intervale, are really protected. We can't develop there. But there are pieces of this kind of nearly connected at this point network kind of quilt work of open spaces that are at risk of being, of not being developed appropriately. I think that the biggest thing that we risk is the lack of the opportunity to get these pieces together and have them understood as a whole. Because unless they're understood as a whole, as pieces, they can be threatened. So it really is. It's not that the stakeholders don't value these lands already; they do. But the kind of developing a trail system on one piece and then on another, and not having those connect, that doesn't fully give us the opportunity to use them together. So let's figure out how to get it to work together, and that way it will always stay together.
Right.
I think an example of that is just the intervale itself, which has 11 owners, and so if you want to go from one side to the other, there are trails, and if you know how to do it, you can make your way through. But having us all meet regularly as a set of partners has really allowed us to talk about how we could have one connected trail with one set of signs. So for the citizen, you get from one place to the other really easily with knowable signage. And also, we're able to talk through where should trails be. Maybe we have too many trails out there. Maybe it's going to be a lot better to have less trails, but more knowable trails. So it'll be better for wildlife to have less trails. It'll be better for people to have the trails be more knowable. So we feel like we can try, or at least we're attempting to try to balance that kind of access and conservation piece.
So we had the summit. We brought together folks. What was learned from that process? What are some of the outcomes of that? 2 years of having summits now.
Right. So we talked a little bit about how we had a first summit, and we in 2017, but we just had a summit last week. That was really exciting. We brought a lot of the same folks back. We brought a lot of new folks in, more people who are involved with city planning processes. So that was really, I think, an exciting shift. Not just the usual conservation suspects, but I think more folks who manage aspects of the city. And we went through a process of doing a little bit of visioning. What would you like to see in 10 years? In 2029, what would look like progress? That was a beginning stage for us to figure out where should we be going? Are we going in the right direction? And really allowing a lot of people to have some input into what that looks like. And then in the afternoon, we talked a lot about what are some of the potential problems, potential conflicts. How do we fund an effort like this? How do we plan an effort like this? How does it really work? So it's kind of like an extended steering committee meeting.
Yeah, and I think the exciting news that I think we had to share at the second summit versus the first summit is that we're actually out there doing things now.
Yes.
And we are about to, we have a website that is up and running, but very kind of at the beginning stages at this point. But we assume, we're working so that website will be a portal for people who want to get to the outside in Burlington. So you can go onto the Wildways website, see where trails are located, see how they're connected. Make a plan as to how to get into the outside.
That's right, because I think
that's one thing. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to add to that is just that because now, if you want to walk at the Ethan Allen Homestead, you have to go to the Winooski Valley Park District website, or if you want to walk in Arms Forest, you need to go to the Burlington Parks and Rec website, and if you want to walk the trails at Rock Point, you need to go to Rock Point's own website. So we're hoping there'll be, I don't think most citizens know who owns which pieces of land. They know they're public, they know they're welcome to be in there, and so we hope that we can be that kind of, by working together, we'll have a central location for people to just figure out how to get into the outdoors.
Right, and so the intent is as trails are developed or trails are more clarified as to where they go, that'll all end up on the website. We also are planning the first rollout of a Wildways trail, nature trail, which is going to be for this upcoming summer,
Yes.
2019. And I think I'll turn it over to Zoe to tell you the details about that one.
Yeah, we're going to run a connected trail from Salmon Hole along the Winooski River, all the way through the Intervale to the Ethan Allen Homestead, up the 127 bike path and over into Ethan Allen Park, and through Ethan Allen Park and out to North Ave, which is a really nice long section. It's, I think when we GPSed it, it was 5.7 miles, so that's really exciting. We have that mapped. We don't have it signed yet. That's going to be on existing trails, so it's not any new trails, but it just allows you to go that if you feel like, hey, I want to run a long distance, you can start in one spot and go to the other and make your way through. And it's pretty, I think a lot of people don't realize how connected these different parts of the city are, and it's pretty neat that you can get all the way from Salmon Hole to North Ave, and very close, you're pretty darn close to the bike path by the time you get over there. So you can run or walk or move through, this kind of wild, open landscape for very long stretches in Burlington. Yeah. It's pretty neat.
And one of the other initiatives that we had discussed at this last summit was that there's signage, but there's also the opportunity perhaps to, because there's so much history. If you think of the Intervale, that was used by the Abenaki, the first Americans, back thousands of years ago. It was used during colonial times as an agricultural environment. There is so much history out there of the inhabitation of all of these people who've been part of the history of Burlington. So that really presents an opportunity for interpretive signage that could be, we haven't figured out exactly how to do this yet, we're still working on it, but that you would be able to actually, as you're hiking along these trails, to get information about, well, this is where a homestead was, or this is where the Abenakis foraged along the riverbank to find food. So there's all this kind of rich information and history that's out there that at this point isn't really, to those who know, they can find it in various places on UVM's website or various other websites. But this will be a place that you can actually, as you're out in the wild, you can find, or these open spaces, you can find this information.
That's right. We hope to be able to tell those natural and cultural history stories
yeah.
as we move along. Yep.
So how do people, I'm watching and I'm excited about Wildways. What's a way I might be able to get involved or kind of find myself kind of influencing or supporting this type of work?
Well, there are a bunch of different ways, I think, to be involved. I mean, first of all, your lovely Parks and Rec department has a Master Naturalist program. So if you're really interested in learning more about natural history in Burlington, you can participate in this Master Naturalist program that's been really very, very successful. You could become a trail steward for the Intervale Center has trail stewards that work out on their trails and try to help folks, maintain the trails.
Yep.
And same Rock Point does as well.
So Rock Point and Intervale both have trail steward programs.
Yep.
Master Naturalist.
Master Naturalist program. There's opportunities to learn to become a wildlife tracker through the Burlington Mammal Tracking Program, and you can, through nifty online platforms like iNaturalist, you can really add a lot to the understanding. You can become trained and add a lot to the understanding of what we have in the city. I mean, most of our observations of things like bobcats and beavers come through citizen science, really good, high-quality citizen science. So that's another really neat avenue to become involved.
That's great.
Yeah.
And so with with the Master Naturalist program, I know that they have folks who participate in that have projects where they will maybe work specifically on a project that will support Wildways
That's
or
right.
support management of a natural
That's
area.
right. We're working with some folks who are helping us figure out which natural history stories are best told in what parts of the city, so that we can have kind of one, so that not everybody who has a natural area is necessarily telling the same story if we're trying to tell some of those natural history stories.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one other thing that we haven't touched on yet that talking about the kind of impact that this initiative might have. We've been working pretty specifically for the past 2 years looking at Burlington and the opportunities within Burlington. But if you think of the Winooski River as it passes through the Intervale, just to the north of that are natural lands, agricultural lands that are in Colchester. And that's just across the river. If there were a ferry that took us across, a bicycle ferry, there's a way to connect that. There are also natural lands in Winooski as well, down by the Winooski River that continue from the Salmon Hole. There are natural lands in South Burlington. So there is that potential to think about this initiative actually being something that other towns and cities around us can adopt as a model. And that offers the opportunity then to create connectivity between the Wildways of Burlington and the Wildways that exist in Colchester, or the Wildways in Burlington and the Wildways that could exist in South Burlington as well. So really, it not only for people, but also for plant and animal communities as well, being able that's critical to their well-being. So really, to us, I mean, obviously we're very enthusiastic about this. We feel as though it has some great potential, and that's part of, I think, some of the enthusiasm is this really is an idea that can spread and do good things elsewhere as well.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful vision. The idea makes a lot of sense because the wildlife don't understand where one town
Correct.
starts and one stops, and neither does the the plant biology. So I guess maybe in closing, in regard to vision, is there anything kind of that you wanted to share, Zoe, in regard to kind of your hopes and dreams for what Wildways can do for Burlington and the surrounding communities?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I just wanted to add that I think one of the really great things about having Burlington Wildways, and we are a group of groups, so we're not an outside group kind of telling all the land managers what they ought to do. We are the land managers and have really tried to get together, and it's been a very creative space. It's been really exciting to have people be able to share what some of their management challenges are in the landscape. There's been a lot of creative discussion about how to solve them, or could we have some citywide expectations around kind of natural area use and things that are, and so that piece I think is an undersung, just all of us getting together in the room. I think you've had that experience yourself, right, Dan, where you get to know some of your counterparts who are doing land management for the Intervale, or and you can share resources and equipment, and it just really leverages the assets that we already have in the city. Feels like a really efficient way to do a better job of conservation and connection. But that's not really that's nitty gritty. I think you were asking a larger vision question, and I would say that Burlington is an amazingly wild city, you know, from the wavy lake and windy lake, and we have this, we get incredible wildlife that comes in to the city and calls the city its home, and uses and requires things like the wetlands of the city, and you know, in the barge canal, you can see least bitterns, the most secretive kind of little shorebird, heron, and that's an amazing thing. We have an incredibly beautiful wild city, and our goal is really to keep it that way and allow people other than people in the know to enjoy that spectacular wildness that we've got.
Maybe I'll just chime in a little bit more
do.
on kind of the perspective of, I think people recognize Burlington for its bike path, the Greenway, and the fantastic kind of open spaces that exist along that Greenway. The waterfront park, Letty Park, down to you know, Red Rocks and so forth. There's a wealth of fantastic spaces out there that people understand that exist along the lakefront. It doesn't just stop there. You know, we have spaces all around the city, and wouldn't it be great for us as a city to be understood not only to have that, but to have a fantastic trail around Burlington that links these spaces. It's something that we would be known for on a national level, and attract people to Burlington as a place to come visit, and possibly a place to think about, you know, coming and living. And we want people to be part of that Burlington experience. So I think that's a real opportunity for us. And I think recognizing the value of these lands, it also means that we can preserve them into the future. And the city, in other words, you know, we have a Parks and Rec department and waterfront as well. It could be park, recs, waterfront, and trails. I know that may be a little bit too much, but it's nice to think about that we could actually then institutionalize that so it is part of the commonwealth of the city that we all value and we preserve for the future.
I'm sure you're making Dan smile by saying that. And just, I know Alicia Daniel, our city naturalist, would like to hear this plug, but I'm going to tell just one last story of one of the things that really got me invested in some of this work is I'm a conservation biologist by training, and I was doing a lot of work with heron rookeries all around Lake Champlain. And I spent a lot of time studying the heron rookery on Valcour Island, which is on the New York State side of the lake. It's about 10 miles away, and we were really interested in where there were close to 500 nesting great blue herons, which is one of the largest great blue heron nesting rookeries in the United States. There are few in the Great Lakes, and they all change sizes, and sometimes ours is the biggest and theirs is the biggest. But we were really interested in where the herons were herons nest in one area and they have feeding territories in other areas. So they were using a lot of different places in Lake Champlain for their key feeding territories. And so we ran a little experiment in which we just mapped out which way herons were coming in and out of the rookery. We had people stationed all around the island. And a large percentage were heading right to the wetlands in Burlington. And it made you realize that there are other kinds of residents in the city, not just people, and we have an obligation to those residents as well. And Burlington is ecologically significant on kind of a regional level. And so we have a responsibility not just to our citizens, but to the other kinds of citizens. And I'm just thinking of herons, but there are many other stories to be told there too. So that was another kind of beginning of my thinking about that kind of work.
I think there are, we've talked about some initial projects, the website and this first connected trail that we're talking about. I think there are many, many others out there that we need to do and we recognize.
Right.
And ones that are going to appear in years ahead that we don't know about.
That's right.
But having the framework to put that into, these potential projects into, really helps us in terms of knowing that we have the capacity to actually do those projects.
That's
so
right.
We have a lot planned, I think.
Yep,
and
yep.
Stay tuned.
Yes, and we're just, I think, building the will to do it and kind of bringing lots of people in so we have the appropriate mission for Burlington and vision for Burlington.
So it's safe to say, I think, from what I've gathered, that if you're interested in this, there's a lot of different ways to plug in. You stay tuned. We've got a website. There'll be more updates. But pretty much if you're participating with any organization in Burlington that manages open space or has conservation as a part of their mission, you're going to be helping contribute to this legacy. So that's a really beautiful situation that we found ourselves here in, with the support of all these great minds coming together. So
it's great.
Yeah.
Great.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up, or
I think we're good.
I think we're good. Yeah. Well, a really great opportunity, I think, and it's been great to talk with you guys today about this initiative. It's something that I did make a point when I was talking at the early part of the summit, this recent summit, to say that City Council, you make decisions that make some people upset.
Yeah.
And when I get down about some of that, because that's just part of being a city councilor, this initiative really gives me hope, and it gives me a lot of spirit. And it I feel as though Burlington is a special place, and I'm glad to be part of it. So I'll say that as my final words.
Any final words, Zoe?
Just, go out there. It's amazing out there. It really is. And you'll see something special if you go out into Burlington natural areas.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Dan.
Dan.
Good to talk with you.
Yeah.